Video games. When you think of video game manufacturers, three names come to mind: Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. These companies have been making consoles and first-party exclusive games for over 2 decades. Even though they all produce consoles and games, they have all different goals in mind. Sony and Microsoft cater to the hardcore, or considered by some semi-casual gamers. These are people who prefer better graphics and cutting-edge technology. The semi-casuals are people who usually buy a console for newer releases of specific franchises, such as the latest FIFA, Madden, or Call of Duty. However, the two differ in how they approach these demographics. Since Sony has more exclusive games, while Microsoft focuses on inclusivity by allowing people to play on what they prefer, be it a console, a PC, or even a phone. Those two companies usually are compared and put against each other to see which is best, because for the most part, they fight for the same demographic. On the complete other hand, there is Nintendo, which is often referred to as the Switzerland of gaming because they do their own thing. They don't necessarily care about graphics or console strength because they focus on their strong and recognizable IPs. They aim for a more casual fan base, like people who dabble in gaming or parents seeking to buy a game for their children. This isn't to say that they aren't hardcore games on the platform, but Nintendo mainly focuses on a family-friendly experience. The three companies have different values, but for the most part Nintendo has their own separate way of thinking. This lack of competition may have been the catalyst for some of Nintendo's more questionable releases like Switch Sports and Battle League, since there's nobody on the market aiming for the same demographic as them. But what if I told you that there used to be a fourth console manufacturer? Someone that rivaled Nintendo in the 90s and kept them on edge, someone who still somewhat rivals Nintendo today, and that would be Sega. Sega's claim to fame was Sonic, which was a mascot created to rival Mario, and as their commercial stated,
16-bit arcade graphics. You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis does what Nintendo.
Sega, like Nintendo, went for the family-friendly demographic. They have so many recognizable series that combat what Nintendo has: Mario, Sonic, Zelda, Wonder Boy, Fire Emblem, Valkyria Chronicles, Rhythm Heaven, Samba de Amigo, Mario Kart, Sega All-Stars, Advance Wars, Sakura Wars, Star Fox, Panzer Dragoons. They also have other classics like Echo the Dolphin, Altered Beast, Alex Kids, Shenmue, and much more. They even dabbled in genres Nintendo has still never touched, like Streets of Rage, Jet Set Radio, Knights, Shinobi, and so much more. Sega has so many amazing and well-received IPs, but what happened? It was actually a multitude of reasons, and some may even shock you. One major factor was communication. Sega of America and Sega Japan had horrible communications, and they both had different ideas on how to run the company. Eventually it reached a point where Sega Japan let SOA do what they wanted as long as SJ had the final say. This lack of cooperation hurt Sega a lot, especially since it led to the rise of two of their biggest competitors. It is said that James Clark of Silicon Graphics made an offer to Tom Kalinske, who was the CEO of Sega of America at the time. The offer was declined by Sega of Japan, and so Silicon Graphics went to Nintendo and created the N64. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. Around the same time, Sony was looking to get into the video game market, and after their rejection by Nintendo, they turned to Sega, which SJ did not agree to the terms that PlayStation was offering, and that led Sony to eventually make the PlayStation. This may have been Sega's biggest mistake because Sega's final console, the Dreamcast, had a great launch in the US. Even with good games and some pretty innovative technology for the time, they just couldn't handle the market because the PlayStation 2 released the following year and became the best-selling console of all time. After severe loss after loss, Sega had no choice than to abandon the hardware business and become a third-party company producing games for consoles they once competed with. I believe this was a huge detriment to gaming, as the big three found their places in the gaming markets, but in today's day and age, there is no big company that competes with Nintendo, which may be the reason that Nintendo has become complacent with their amazing sales on Switch. Nintendo has no reason to innovate when there is simply a lack of competition. They're dominating their side of the market with no sign of them ever losing their hold on their fan base. Now, do I think if Sega still made consoles things would have changed? Not necessarily. I feel like Sega would have been the first to drop out eventually, but I just wish that Sega didn't give up on their popular and interesting IPs to favor Sonic. Nowadays, Sega pretty much only puts out Sonic, Yakuza, the 2-point series, Bayonetta, and whatever Atlas is working on, be it Shin Megami Tensei or Persona. Sega has a ton of IPs at their disposal. Some are massively loved and people would die for another entry. A series I'd recommend to Sega fans is Project Crossout. It's an RPG that takes franchises from Capcom, Bandai, and Sega and puts them all into a connected universe. The interactions are charming and they really show love to some characters that may never see the light of day again. But anyway, I think that many Sega IPs would fare well in today's gaming landscape, but Sega ultimately doesn't care to revive them, and that's what I believe is leading to games like Mario Strikers or Switch Sports to release in an unfinished state, because Nintendo has no real competition, which allows them to maintain a monopoly. If you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing. Comment down below whether you agree with my thoughts. Other than that, I'll catch you on the flip side. See ya.